Go ahead and get started because I don't want to keep you all waiting and honor your time. But I'm so excited that you're here, and if people wander in, we'll just catch them up with where we are. So I am Suzanne Parker Miller. I'm an ordained Moravian minister. I'm based in Raleigh, North Carolina, and this is Expanding Church and School Partnerships to Help Neighbors Thrive. So if you're not in the right workshop, you're still welcome. There is a packet of papers on your table that you can each grab a packet. If you need more, I have extra up front. For those who are online, you should have the email that I sent out with the link to the full packet so that you can look through those as you want. You don't need to print them today, but you do have them for us to use. So this is me, my contact information. You also should have all of the slides from today already. I have them linked in the email that I sent you at the link there to my website. Everything is there. So all the books that we talk about, the books that are on the tables for you to look at, please don't take the books, those are mine. But you can look through them, and there's different books on every table, so look around before we're done. But they're all listed in the resource list, plus more. And then there's stickers and my cards and pens, all that's for you all to take. So, and candy if you need candy. I'm sorry I can't send candy to all of you online at home, but find a snack or a drink and join us. So just very, very briefly, who I am. I am the executive director and founder of Pastors for North Carolina Children. We are a nonpartisan, nonprofit, ecumenical, independent ministry. I'm based in Raleigh. I work statewide across North Carolina. And this past year, I've done more national work than ever. So there's certainly no declining need for our work. We are part of the Pastors for Children Network, which is in multiple states. It started in Texas, Pastors for Texas Children, about 15 years ago, and is continuing to expand. I did include the principles for public education advocacy. That is something that my board put together a couple years ago to kind of guide the principles that we support as a positive statement of what we support. Just thought that might be of interest to folks to know what we stand for. And then other contact information. If you want the digital and you didn't get the link or something, you can scan this QR code, especially if you're at home, and it'll pop up with the link tree, and the top link should get you everything today. Come on in, have a seat. Yep, join us. So I just wanted to go over a couple of quick norms. I don't expect this to be any type of problem, but I just thought I'd put it in. We want to assume everybody's best intent today. As some of my friends say, don't yuck someone's yum. We want to be kind. This was one I heard recently, a cookie dough principle. Half-baked ideas are okay and welcome. And then popcorn and crock pots are also welcome. I love the food theme to this, especially after we just ate. But some people shout things out immediately. Some people have ideas quickly. The popcorn, that's great. Some people need to let it simmer a little while before you speak. We welcome all of that. If you have questions as we go, please raise your hand. Don't necessarily wait till the very end. If we're talking about something and it's a question about that, please stop me. Same for those online. If you put questions in the chat, Edie will be, thanks to Edie over here for helping, she will be sharing the questions. And I will say, as we're sharing in here, we have a mic, and if somebody will help me run the mic to different people, because we want to capture your voices for those online. Just make space for others. We don't want to have any one person dominating the conversation, including me. And we are not going to solve all the world's problems today. I'm going to put that up front. We are not going to fix everything that's wrong with public education today in one session. We have to accept non-closure. So I hope this is the start of a conversation, and I hope that we can continue that conversation. I want to start today as we begin this time with a prayer. A friend of mine, a Baptist clergy in North Carolina, wrote this, and I share it with you. So join me in prayer. Holy God, in whom we live and move and have our very being, thank you for the gifts of your light in the children among us, for your promise to know their greatest joys and their deepest sorrow, for your deep and abiding love. Teach us our responsibility toward your children. Open our hearts and minds to to the needs which we must meet, to the gaps that we must fill, to the doors that we must open, to the wisdom that we must impart. Direct us in paths of righteousness as we make decisions about our schools, about work and worth, about salary and program support, about the provision of food and transportation and support services. Guide us to engage, advocate, listen, ask, and act. We pray for children whose brains are dancing with hope and curiosity. We pray for children for whom learning is made difficult because of barriers rooted in language, inequity, or challenges of mind and body and medication. We pray for children who arrive frail, hungry, scared, sad, and broken. We pray for children whose legs cannot navigate the stairs of the school bus or the playground or the building. We pray for children who are nourished by play and beautiful music and the opportunity to create beautiful things. We pray for children for whom school is the only happy and safe place. We pray for all teachers, bus drivers, custodians, administrators, nutrition specialists, counselors, psychologists, nurses, and volunteers who give all that they have, knowing that more is needed. Inspire in us the courage to advocate, the wisdom to insist on what is right and good, and the compassion to work for wholeness for all children and all who serve them. Amen. So at your tables, I'd like you to just take a moment and share with each other your name, where you're serving or what capacity you're serving in, and your school partnership. If you already have one, if you are looking to start one, just take a moment and share with each other. And those in the chat, please also share that in the chat with each other.
Hi.
Finish up your sharing real quick.
Orange County, California. But I graduated
I hate to stop the conversation, but I do want us to keep moving. So I'm glad you all are having a chance to chat. If we could just go around and tell me your state real quick. I'm really curious to know what states are represented and countries. So if you'll just...
New York.
New York.
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania, okay. Canada. And which area of Canada?
Toronto.
Okay, awesome.
Texas.
Okay. Back in the back. Okay. Okay.
Pennsylvania.
Awesome. Ohio, okay.
Virginia.
Virginia, yep. Iowa. North Carolina. Pennsylvania, awesome. Texas, awesome.
Georgia, and then very soon Pennsylvania.
Georgia/Pennsylvania, perfect. Awesome. I love that we have a variety. I've tried to include, and I know Edie's from South Carolina, I've tried to include resources from all the states that I have, but I will keep looking. If you're not on the list, I will be sure to include that as I find organizations that I either have worked with or that I recommend based off of being actually pro-public education, because that's a key that sometimes they're not always pro-public ed. So I want to spend a few minutes hearing from you all, which is why we'll need the mic, so be sure you can use the mic. Finding out what you all are currently doing as far as partnerships, either things that you are doing in your congregation, you've done previously, or things that you've heard others doing. Doesn't necessarily mean everything you have to have done. But I'd like to just, up here on the board, we're going to put up all the different ideas. And I want you to, when you have an idea or share things, tell me which category you would put it in. So I've tried to break things down into 6 categories, broad categories. So basic needs of students. I was talking to Kathy earlier, school supply drives, things like that would fit in that category. Staff support. So things that either teacher appreciation, tutoring might be in there. We could also probably argue to put it in different categories, but things that are supporting the staff themselves. Building and infrastructure, are you sharing buildings? Are you using buildings back and forth? Playgrounds, I don't know what that could be, but lots of ideas. Possibly financial and fundraising, which I think I spelled it wrong, I apologize. But financial and fundraising, are you helping raise money for a school situation? Advocacy and justice, and then a catch-all other. I may need to expand this category list, so we'll see what we come up with. But if you would like to come up or somebody could run the mic, would somebody be willing to run the mic? Thank you, Jennifer. Awesome, Jennifer.
You want me to sit down again?
You can just, stand up and tell us, and I'll write it up here.
So,
Tell
I'm
me which category.
basic needs. So our church is right across the street from a public high school, and we have done hygiene item drives, especially feminine hygiene, and given them to the counselors, and they're really much needed at that high school level. We've also collected like winter clothes, coats and clothing and gloves, hats, etc. We've done some things for staff support as well, by providing snacks and different things for teachers and for faculty and staff. Building and infrastructure, they use our building for various things, especially the fine arts. We have a really great sanctuary, and so they've used our sanctuary for concerts and competitions, those kinds of things.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody else.
We've also done the school supply drives and hygiene kits as well. Something different we've done for teachers. We reached out to our elementary teachers to ask what kind of supplies do they have to buy on their own. And so we've provided them with like Clorox wipes and tissues and dry erase markers. And we go directly to the teachers and say, tell us what you need. They give us a list for that year and we take care of that. One thing we also do for the high school students, when they take their state mandated standardized testing, they're allowed to have hard candy. So we will collect a lot of hard candy and make little bags of hard candy for them that they can use during their testing, and to send out like a little note, good luck, do your best, be patient, all of the encouraging things. With the music department, we have partnered with the band directors, and a member of our church is a retired band director from the school. And so for Christmas and Easter, we invite different musicians from their high school band to come play with us. And right now we have a group, a quartet that they started when they were freshmen, and they keep coming back. And 2 of them have actually graduated and keep coming back. We've built such a good relationship with them. In the summer, we have a community event in our parking lot, and the band kids have assembled themselves when it's outside of marching band season and put together some jazz music and came and played in our parking lot. And
That's
then
cool. Where would you put that? Where do you think
I
that
would
fit?
probably put that under other, because it really is just giving the kids an opportunity to use their gifts in different ways that they don't get at school. Another thing we did during the pandemic was we opened our building for Wi-Fi. And so the kids were able to come to use our building to do school. And we had some retired teachers in our congregation that would just help facilitate that, help with tutoring if needed, and those types of things. And then we also, because of we're centrally located in our town, we act as a cooling and a warming center. So if school's canceled and they have virtual school, they can do that in our building as well.
We just finished a capital campaign, and the organization that supports public schools in our community is one of the recipients of the mission component of that. So that would be under fundraising. Our youth adopt families recommended through the counselor at the school we're in partnership with for their Christmas service project.
Where would you put that?
Under probably basic need, I mean, it's Christmas, we get recommendations on the families, what they would like and shopping for. The school is always the recipient of the Vacation Bible School Service Project, which usually is putting together kits, sometimes for teachers or sometimes directly for students. We have a Logos ministry on Wednesday nights, and each year the kids invite their teachers to come, so we have teacher night. So we have teachers that come, but we also have invited the county and city school superintendents, and they have also come along with the counselors from the local school where we have partnerships. So that's a really good place where we affirm public education. So on the staff support, but it's our annual teacher night at Logos.
A couple years ago, we did a campaign that we called lifting up local families, and so we partnered with 2 or 3 Title I schools and communicate regularly with their school social workers that will recommend families that are having issues with rent or the initial security deposits to get into safe and secure housing, and that has been. We've built some relationships. It's been really life-giving for us. In addition to supporting some of these families that need those resources.
He mentioned, let me interrupt just a second. He mentioned Title I. Are you all familiar with what Title I means? So Title I funding, for those who may not, are funds that come directly from the federal government, from the Department of Education, which we'll talk about in a minute, that support schools who have 45% or more students who receive free and reduced lunch, which is the way that we measure poverty in our schools. So students who are receiving that free and reduced lunch by families meeting certain thresholds of income, then those schools receive extra support, which often is what pays for a full-time social worker or extra counselors or other support programs to help. The other thing I was going to mention is McKinney-Vento. Does that name mean anything? McKinney-Vento is the name of a federal program for students who are unhoused to ensure that they have stability in their schooling, even if their housing is unstable. So they provide busing, transportation of some sort to get kids who may be living in a hotel to their school or who are living at a shelter to the school, so that the school doesn't change every time the family moves. And so that is really important to provide that stability. That's also a federally funded program. Hunter.
Yes, okay, there we go. I work in special education. I'm a disability advocate. I work teaching educators and support staff about what it's like to be a young person with a disability transitioning to life after high school. I work a lot with vocational rehabilitation. And if you do not know, every state in the union has some form of an office devoted to vocational rehabilitation, which is the fancy government name for helping disabled people find and keep work. And as far as, things tied to these partnerships, as far as basic needs go, helping ensure that any accessibility needs that we can help support. Also just adopting some of those more universal design things, kind of reversing them, putting them in our churches rather than, because they're already happening in schools. And as far as advocacy and justice go, thinking about partnering with VR in order to allow for easy, tiptoeing into the workplace. If you think about it, for young students who are maybe trying to find their first job and it can be really hard for students with behavioral issues or learning disabilities to find employment that is accessible for them and supportive. So imagine filling some of those maybe secretary positions or IT positions or Sunday school positions with a young person trying to figure all that out together and be supported by VR. It's a huge opportunity. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox.
And that's vocational.
Vocational rehabilitation.
I have a couple from the chat.
Please.
Jody says, because we host an after-school program for middle school, I feel like I'm loud, and we house a preschool, we often pair them up for reading projects or game day. And Annie says, the district that we are most closely connected to is very wealthy. A lot of these connections are typically through service. There are definitely students that need help, but it is a much smaller population in this particular district. Most of our service goes to other districts in the Cincinnati area. The closest thing that we have to an official partnership is offering service trips and service options for students in the school. For example, we often make sandwiches at large events that are extended to the school. This would address basic needs of the students, but not the students we work with.
More thing I forgot to mention. We work with the Director of Student Services in our school district, and they help us to identify families that may be like housing insecure. And so we use our pastor's discretionary fund to help pay rent or utilities for families that are in need.
That could also go under financial. Just a second.
I'd also forgotten one. So we live in a district that has a lot of violence, and we had like a 6-week period where we had 8 or 9 shootings. And so the pastors, I'd forgotten because I wasn't part of this at the time. The pastors kind of all rallied together to be present in the lobby of the high school specifically as kids were coming back to school, because a couple of the shooting victims had been students. And then after that, the pastors kind of took turns being present in the school daily, just hanging out in the cafeteria for lunch. And then some of them were able to actually take hall monitor duty. That was making it easier for the teachers who needed to tend to other things. And that was more of an emergency event. Thank God we haven't had any shootings this school year yet that have involved students. But it is way more prevalent than, of course, we would like it to be. And that's the way that the pastors have been getting involved with the schools.
We had one up here real quick. Or go ahead and we'll bring it up.
Okay. So for the last 3 years, we've hosted a trunk or treat at the middle school that we're partnered with. So rather than asking people to come to us, we go there and at the football field. But in addition to candy, we've done food things. So we have like a noodle car and a cereal car, and so that there are ways for them a fruit car where they're getting nutritional food as well, but in a way that's not like, well, we know you need food. And then we've also done book drives.
I also come from a very wealthy, good school district, but that doesn't mean they don't have problems. We have a very high rate of psychological problems in particularly middle and high school kids. So my church founded Pittsford Youth Services and helps to pay for a psychologist, so there is actually an official organization now. And it runs like a regular counseling service now, but we founded it and we still support it financially. And the other thing we did was we used to send, well, we still do, we send backpacks into the city of Rochester to the very poor neighborhoods where the children don't have anything to eat over the weekend if they're living in a car. And it has to be stuff that doesn't need to be cooked, etc., etc. In fact, you can't even give them cans if they don't have a can opener, you know, the kind of thing. And we discovered that there was a great need in one of our elementary schools. We're taking 40 backpacks to an elementary school that doesn't have more than like 1,000 kids in it. That is
Only 40?
only 40 is shocking for a very wealthy suburb. It may increase, but that we just started this year with 40. We could do more. It's the school district needs to tell us.
That's awesome. And I know my own children's school, we have about 500 students and we do about 100 backpacks a week. Yeah.
So Julie asks, I'm looking to set up a partnership with local schools for after-school art programs with art as spiritual practice, and am unsure how to approach it when my programming is faith-based. So that may be a question for later, but.
Yeah, let's get to that. If we can hold that for later, I think we may touch on some of that a little bit.
One more thing, sorry. I think I would put this under advocacy and justice. So just for my own personal information, and also because I'm director of faith formation at the church, I enrolled in a year-long program called the Richardson Independent School District Ambassadors, which is kind of like an inside the school district program. So monthly we had programs on how the school district is run and school finance, and we learned about McKinney-Vento and all of the things about public school. And now we have this sort of group of people who are now advocates for public education. And they call on us now, after our year has been completed, to do things, to be on committees, to just be involved with the public school.
Awesome. Last call for any ideas. Well, back in the back. I don't want to cut us off because these are good ideas, but I want us to keep going too. So go ahead.
Earlier, what was it? 2025. We have a middle school and a high school right across the street from our church. We also have a Catholic school right next door to us, and an elementary school that's about a 2-minute walk from where we are. So what we did with the middle school was to meet basic needs, we raised money for $50 gift cards. So that if any student needed something, they could go to the community liaison at the school and hand those out to students who had need. We also have made, because we're across the street from the school, we've offered to the high school and the middle school rent-free access to any of our facilities. So if they needed a space that was outside of school, they could come and use one of our, multi-purpose rooms to, hold an event. So, for example, Math Olympiad, they come to our church twice a month in our multi-purpose room so that they can have a space to practice. Also, with the Catholic school next to us, they don't have a gym, but we have a basketball court. So we allow them to use our basketball court as well, free of charge. What we're planning to do in September, there's a rivalry between two high schools that are not far from us. So we're going to have a tailgate party for those two schools at our church the night of the game. The stadium's right across the street, so it allows us to reach out to both of those student bodies and high schools as well. We're also looking to, we just hired a children's coordinator, so we're looking to reach out to the elementary school, particularly with the focus of finding out how we can support children who are neurodivergent, because our new children's coordinator has specializes in education with children who are neurodivergent.
put that as expertise sharing, so that's great. As we continue, we can keep adding things if we think of them as well. One that we didn't mention that I've experienced, one of the churches that I work with in North Carolina has a school across the street. They share the space for like the beginning of the school year, teacher breakfast. They'll have it in the fellowship hall and feed the teachers. And this year they decided to put up like a prayer wall and invite the teachers to just like put on it their prayers for their prayer requests for the coming year. And what we did on Education Sunday, I went down and was the guest preacher, and we made cards that we took the prayer requests anonymously, and kind of edited them slightly so they would be anonymous, but put each of those on one card, and then on the back put like a little quote prayer thing. And this members of the church took those and then praying for the teachers throughout the year so that they know that they're being, uplifted in prayer. And it was done, optional. People could opt in if they wanted to. It wasn't a coercive type thing, but that was really meaningful for the staff that were there that day for Education Sunday. They invited them to the service as well, and the principal brought greetings and stuff like that. So, as we look at the categories up here, what do you notice?
A lot of basic needs.
A lot of basic needs, yes.
Can be streamlined, be done readily, a lot of widespread involvement in those communities.
Widespread involvement in our communities. It can be streamlined, it can be done repetitively. It's ongoing sometimes it may be a one-off. But yes, basic needs we obviously have the most in.
There is a correlation between basic needs and advocacy and justice.
There's a correlation between basic needs and advocacy and justice. Say more. Libby.
Thank you.
That a lot of the needs that students have and that families have and that teachers have are directly tied to issues of their voices not being heard, their perspectives not being welcomed, decisions being made about them without them. And that in order to go about meeting those basic needs more readily, more systemically, more effectively, we need to go hand in hand with the community organizations that are geared towards lifting up those voices and perspectives so that they can be addressed.
Thank you for finishing the workshop. We're done now.
Sorry.
No, that's awesome. Thank you. That's exactly what I was hoping we would start to see in some of the conversation. So, other observations, other thoughts?
I'm going to say this, and I don't mean it I feel like it's going to sound shady, and I don't mean it to, but the bucket that has the most things in it are things that do not require partnership or relationship. Mm-hmm. It is us giving and us doing and us handing things over to you without necessarily knowing who is there. Yeah.
Facts.
Yeah.
Facts. That was yelled from the back. Yes. Yes. Absolutely. And those are things that we like to do. They're things that are easy for our churches to get on board with. Those are not bad things. Providing for the basic needs of our students is crucially important. And it is not enough. So, this is a quote, and I think this is so appropriate after the discussion this morning about neighbor and the 10 different ways to understand neighbor, which I was furiously jotting down as much as I could. So this is a quote from a pastor in Chicago. You cannot love your neighbor while supporting or accepting systems that crush, exploit, and dehumanize them. You cannot love your neighbor while accepting less for them and their families than you do for yours and your own.
Amen.
Not my quote, but yes. I mean, this quote for me just resonates over and over again. What I want from my kids is what other parents deserve for their kids as well. If it's not good enough for my kids, it's not good enough for other kids too. It's a common good concern. Because when our children are thriving, our communities are thriving. If our children aren't thriving, Our communities are not thriving. I don't think I have to make that case here. I have a feeling that you all are pretty much in agreement with me. I'm seeing a lot of nods. But this is so important. So then, if we're going to talk about advocacy and justice some, this is a question I get a lot. Faith and politics, how? You can't do that. We don't do politics. We don't talk about that here. If we're not talking about politics, we're not talking about the gospel.
Preach it.
Because politics means the way we govern and live together in community. That's the meaning of the word politics. If we break it down, what we don't like is partisanship. We can't be partisan, but we must be political. And if we're going to be partisan, we're going to be partisan on the side of the poor and the vulnerable. We have to encourage people to vote. We cannot tell them who to vote for. That's the distinction. Churches and our 501c3s and things like that, we can deal with issues. We cannot deal with party or people. If you're looking for a resource, which I'll add to the resource list, I didn't even think about it. The Unitarian Universalists have a great website that breaks down exactly what you can and can't do as far as like the partisan politics, like what's allowed with a 501c3 and what's not. So I'm not going to go into all of that, but there are some great resources and I'll make sure to add them to the list. Any questions about this? How many of you have heard this in your own congregations? We can't do politics. Yeah.
Question.
Yes, question.
Thank you.
How then can we address issues that certain parties do or don't admit exist, or do or don't, let's say, acknowledge? How do you remain nonpartisan when, by virtue of naming an issue, that becomes partisan?
That's a great question. I think there's a couple ways we can do it. One, by sticking to the gospel and sticking to what Scripture says about caring for the poor and the vulnerable. You know, Luke 4, Jesus says if it's not good news to the poor, it's not good news. You know, sticking to some of those types of things, really diving into Scripture is really important. But also relationships with those who are affected. If we can, that's why these partnerships can be really important, because it helps us to see beyond the partisan line. Because then you're not just talking about, you know, kids who don't have food that's now politicized somehow. And we're talking about Johnny and Amir and, you know, the kids that we actually know who literally are, you can hear their bellies growl while you're reading to them because they didn't eat breakfast. That's a different conversation, which is why that connection, the partnership is where the relationship is where we have to start.
So we have a problem in Texas that some churches are overly involved in public schools, and what I mean to say is that they use every opportunity they can to proselytize and try to recruit students. And so in our school district, I'm really involved. My kid is a product of public schools. I'm a product of public schools. But I know of folks in our school district who are very, very opposed to churches being involved at all in schools, because frankly, it's like, if one church misbehaves, you're all going to misbehave, and we don't want you proselytizing to our kids, and even though you're going to do good things for our kids, we don't want the strings attached. So they don't want public schools to be, or I'm sorry, churches to be involved at all. So how do you address that? Like, how would I address that with someone who is very wary of what churches want to do?
It's an awesome question. I'm glad you asked it. And if you can wait just a few minutes, we're going to get there. we're headed there in just a minute. So let me keep going a second, and we'll get there, because I have a great story to share with you about that from my own hometown. So one of the things when we want to start thinking about advocacy and justice, just even as ourselves, maybe not even including our congregations yet, maybe this is also working with other organizations, is we need to figure out who is in charge of what. What lever can we push? What way can we affect whatever it is that we're wanting to work on? So this power analysis, which we could do a whole workshop on power analysis, but this is a really quick breakdown. Who makes the decisions, who's responsible for the funding, and who can fix our concern? Because what most people think of, who haven't done a power analysis, is we're going to go either to the classroom teacher or the principal to fix whatever the problem is, because it's their fault, because that's who we interact with the most. Except that all of these people above them are the ones actually making the vast majority of the decisions. So looking at the ones in green at the top, those are things that we deal with in the federal level. This is obviously not applicable to Canada. I don't know exactly how the Canadian system works, I apologize. But all of these different groups affect different parts of policy. You might be surprised to see the Department of Agriculture up there. The school lunch program, breakfast and lunch program, is run through the Department of Ag. So the farm bill every year that they have to pass, that they throw all kinds of other pork into, nobody's going to vote against the school lunch program that's also included in it.
Until they do.
Until they do. But it's a way that they, and then that gets used against people because you didn't vote for the school lunch program. So when you start hearing the political ads, you have to dive deeper to find out what was really going on. Department of Education, I list here with some trepidation. Here, I kind of put it in yellow because I don't actually know where the Department of Ed stands at the moment. It's been abolished, but there's still a secretary for it, and I don't know right now. Can you answer?
I can speak to the statewide level, at least here in PA, because that's where I work. It really does vary by state. On the official side of...
Just a second. They've pushed everything to the states. So it is going to vary by state. But go ahead and share about Pennsylvania.
Yeah, so at least according to the laws as they are encoded in not just the federal law, but state laws, there are certain things that must be maintained. The only difference is the federal Department of Ed is trying to push all of the responsibilities of that into the states without actually giving them the personnel, the funding, or the ability to do any of that. And that's probably part of the point. All right, there we go.
So the Department of Ed civil rights is the biggest probably piece of what's going on. The reason the Department of Ed was created under Carter was because states weren't doing what was necessary to educate kids. So the civil rights piece is huge. Maintaining Brown versus Board and all the subsequent legislation since then. All the other funding sources too, like she was mentioning, all that's being pushed to states without the funding being brought, so on and so forth. I have a list that's linked here. You'll be able to click the links in the presentation that has a list of federal, national, and statewide organizations that are working on this. If you have questions or would like me to introduce you or connect you with people, I know people at a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them. So I'd be glad to introduce you to your statewide organizations or other groups. And if you know of a group, like David was telling me about one earlier that I don't have on my list, so let me know, I'll add the information. So why is our faith-based advocacy right now needed so much? I mean, we just were naming some of the reasons. How many of you are familiar with Christian nationalism? Okay. So this is a definition that I had came across, and now I wish I had quoted exactly who said it. But anyways, it's a cultural framework that idolizes and advocates a fusion of Christianity with American civil life. Christian nationalism contends that America has been and should always be distinctively Christian from top to bottom in its self-identity, interpretations of its history, sacred symbols, cherished values, public policies. But it's more about identity than it is actually about faith and religion. And it also comes with the assumptions of the nativism, the white supremacy, authoritarianism, patriarchy, militarism, all the fun isms. These are a couple of books I recommend if you are wanting to dive in more. But how does that affect public ed specifically? Almost every issue that we are facing right now in public education, I can tie back to Christian nationalism in one way or another. And a lot of that goes back to Brown versus Board and the resistance against Brown, which I have some books on the table about. It is all rooted in segregation and preserving segregation, which is why they are so bound up together. So the school vouchers, the original school vouchers, taking public money and giving it to private schools, that came about in the 60s and 70s as a way to counter Brown and create segregation academies. Look at the private schools in your area. If you want to do a little research dive, figure out when they started and why. Who started them, why'd they start them? They may not say they're a segregation academy on their website, but check the date. They started in the 60s, 70s, even early 80s. Even today, but especially back then. Maybe. The failing schools narrative. So privatization wants to push schools and children to be able to make money. They want to make money off of our kids. Well, how do you do that? You drive a narrative that says schools are failing, so you should send them to private schools. Our schools aren't failing. I mean, there are some that are probably really not doing a good job. But they're not failing. They're underfunded, underappreciated, and under-resourced.
Yep.
And I understand you can't just throw money at a problem, but at least in North Carolina, where we are 50th in the country in funding, y'all, we are 50th. We were 49th. We dropped back to 50th this year. You cannot make lemonade when you don't have lemons. You can't work when you don't have resources. And we know resources make a difference. There are case studies out there looking at the Department of Defense schools that tend to be very well funded because the general's kids and the enlisted kids go to school together. We know the funding makes a difference. It won't fix everything, but by golly, let's try. Book bans, rewriting history. How many of you have experienced book bans in your community? Yeah, all of that ties back into Christian nationalism. The 10 Commandments, which Louisiana and Texas and Oklahoma have been fighting, and others.
No, we're not fighting it, it's already there, it's already.
Well, there's still court cases.
There are court cases.
I have friends who are involved in court cases.
Yes,
they're still in play, but yes, you're right. And just as a note, they don't even use a version of the 10 Commandments that's correct.
It's King James.
And the Protestants, the Catholics, and the Jewish folks use different versions, and so which one do you even pick that's correct?
Right.
And they're not in Hebrew.
Nope.
They're in King James English.
Yep.
Anyways, that's a whole soapbox. And chaplains, which Texas has dealt with some, replacing counselors in schools who are trained school counselors, psychologists, with chaplains who have no background or training.
Nope.
That's happening in Texas.
They don't have to be ordained in the proposal in Iowa.
They don't have to be ordained, they don't have to be trained, they don't have to be background checked, they don't have to have any experience. Yes?
Can I just throw another thing on?
Sure.
Just to throw another Christian nationalist thing into
Oh,
public.
this isn't the complete list.
Oh, okay. This is something we're experiencing in Georgia, but
Please.
protecting girls' sports to keep trans kids from participating in public
Yes,
sports.
trans kids in sports, which is like 4 kids in the whole country, if we're really honest. I mean, it's so minimal of even a consideration.
Well, Georgia wants to protect the children from bathrooms and boys playing girls' sports, but will do nothing about guns.
Right, that's everywhere. So, devotions at sporting events, or prayer at sporting events before or after. Turning Points clubs, I had 3 meetings last week that all involved Turning Point clubs. Charlie Kirk's organization bringing in and starting like religious clubs at schools.
Our governor wants them in every public high school in
They
the
want them in
state.
every public high school in all of Texas.
Yes.
Release time for religious education. Have any of you heard of that?
Yep. Yeah.
So that is, especially if you're from Ohio, it's huge right now, but it's coming other places. They allow people to, they allow churches to come in, take kids out for like an hour to the church, move off of campus with kids for an hour, like bus them somewhere else to do Sunday school, and then bring them back. And LifeWise is the organization that's doing a predominant amount of it. They're a Christian nationalist organization. It is really scary, the lack of background checks, the transportation issues, the cutting into school time. There's so many issues. I could go on. Prayer in schools, the overall, we've been talking about that for years, but all the ways that tends to show up. Any others? You mentioned the trans kids in sports. Other things? Well, this is the example you mentioned about, somebody mentioned something earlier about ways churches are getting involved. So this is a story from my local hometown. And I found out about it because the school system communications person, when I was at a meeting with her one day, told me about it and kind of laughed. And I was horrified. And she wouldn't tell me who it was. So a very quick Google search figured out exactly where it was. But this is a church in town that has been hosting the football team for meals, like before games, for years. And now they're doing devotions with them. And in August, they baptized 11 football players after practice one evening on the field in the ice bucket trough that they use for like the rehab, they baptized 11 players. And the article goes on to say that credits that with why they had a winning season. No joke, it's in the article. I linked it, you can go read it. That's not okay. I was horrified when the lady told me that this had happened. And she was seeing it from like a PR standpoint, and she just kind of laughed. And I was like, oh my goodness. That is a violation of multiple constitutional amendments, particularly the separation of church and state. And that's not okay. Not okay. And so you were talking about churches who are crossing that line. And so that is one of my tips that we'll get to is this is not evangelism. Proselytizing cannot, should not, does not need to be a reason or part of this work.
Yes. That's right.
If your goal is to proselytize, please stay away.
But they don't.
I know, but we're working on, got to keep raising the awareness. But yes, you're right. And they are setting bad examples, which make it harder for some of us to do the other work that we actually want to do and are called to do. You're absolutely right. It's where the relationships also, earning that place to be able to work with the school is really important, gaining that trust. And as I'll say in a minute, under-promising and over-delivering. Couple of resources, though, about Christian nationalism. Amanda Tyler is the director of the Baptist Joint Committee on Religious Liberty. I don't know if Presbyterians know about the BJC. They are one of the best organizations in DC right now doing work against Christian nationalism. Christians Against Christian Nationalism is their big project. And this is a great book. I've done a couple book studies with it It's 8 steps. You can easily break it down. It's very accessible. She has questions included in it. So it's a great study if you're looking for something. So I also have a lot of other Christian nationalist resources, and there's some in your packet as well for you to take and learn more about, share. But what are questions that we need to consider as we're thinking about partnerships? And this is this page of your worksheets. So you don't need to fill it in right now, but hopefully you can take this, maybe work with your team if you have a team at your church who are considering a partnership, or if you already have one, maybe going back through it and just kind of checking in to see where things stand. So who might be interested in participating? If you've never done this type of thing, who might be interested? Who can lead it? Because the pastors don't often need to be the ones leading it. We have enough other things going on. But what are the gifts and talents, the resources that your church has to share? What can we share that might be helpful, that we might not think about? And being realistic for the time, energy, and resources that we do have. We do not want to overpromise and underdeliver. That's how you burn a relationship. We want to be sure that what we're doing, that we start small enough that we can sustain that. One-off things are fine, but building that ongoing, sustaining relationship is really more of the goal, at least in my thoughts. Who are you already connected with? If you don't have a church in your community that you're working with, or a school in your community, who might you be able to reach out to? Maybe you don't have one across the street. Or maybe the church across the street is well-resourced and not necessarily the school that needs the help. Looking at the school's data can really be helpful. Yes?
Yeah,
Mike.
Just considering overpromising and underdelivering, we started a tutoring program this year, and it was 2 hours, 3 days a week. And it was with a couple of retired teachers. And we started small. We started with 6 kids because we wanted to be able to fulfill what we were promising. And we've slowly added another day and another half an hour and another half an hour as the program's grown, as we've had more volunteers. And it is not the sexiest thing our church does. It is not like outwardly the most successful. It's like, oh, it's a couple of old retired teachers and 6 kids. But the value in those small lives that we're changing and the growth that's there and that we're seeing there. So I just wanted to share that on it's okay to start small and see where it grows and what it grows into.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's awesome. Tutoring, what great resources we have in retired teachers in our schools. People who are willing to either go into the school and read with students or do tutoring or other things. That one-on-one mentoring is so life-changing for kids. So important. What are the demographics that we were mentioning? So picking the school that you want to work with. Perhaps you do have a really greatly resourced school across the street. Look at schools' demographics, your free and reduced lunch statistics. All this stuff is, at least up until very recently, could be found online. Most of that's kept at the state level. You can look at those types of things.
Our state has gone, I think the whole state has gone to, everybody gets free lunches.
Yeah,
so we can't get that figure anymore.
Right, and that's wonderful that states like New York and Minnesota and others have that. A lot of us don't have that still, so it's a problem. But you can also look at things like Spanish speakers or students who, English is a foreign language, academically gifted. All those statistics to help you think about what schools might need more help. What barriers? Naming those barriers that might get in the way. We may not have enough, people, or we may need to think about transportation if it's after school, as the person was asking online. How are you going to get them home and practice basically the equivalent of safe sanctuaries policies? Or is that what Presbyterians call it?
Yeah.
Maintaining those same safety procedures is really important. Who are the stakeholders you need to get bought in? And then, and this is one we often forget, what are the greatest needs of the school?
Yep.
Going and actually asking the school what they need. Because what we have to offer may not be what they actually need, and it may be something that we didn't even remotely think of. And I'll say, if you're gonna do a school supply drive, which we named a lot of different ways we do that, please get what they actually ask for.
No rose art.
And please buy Crayola and Ticonderoga.
Yes, please.
It is a hill I'm willing to die on. Please buy Crayola and Ticonderoga. This is not an ad. I am not sponsored by them. But they last so much longer as resources than the crappy, cheap crayons and pencils. There is nothing worse than really crappy crayons. Anybody remember the excitement of getting a new box of crayons when you're a kid?
Sharpener? Oh my
With
God.
the sharpener and like the 24 box for school. They smell good. They're the real thing. Every kid deserves a real box of Crayola crayons, y'all. And teachers will tell you the Ticonderoga that are already sharpened are gold. Yeah, where'd the mic go? Oh, perfect.
In thinking about, you know, other community partners that are school adjacent, because like maybe you're in with the school itself isn't the best in, PTOs, parent-teacher organizations are a great place to start. Also, on the disability side of things, because that's my world, every state has what's called a Parent Training and Information Center, or PTI, and their entire job is to support parents of kids with disabilities to help them navigate the education system. And those might be great partnerships if you're not ready to jump straight into school relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. And along that same lines, you don't have to be the only church working with that school. You also don't have to you can work with other churches and maybe coordinate. I know my church that I attend in Raleigh works with the church across the street to do the backpacks, you know, for the food. So we do some weeks and they do some weeks, and it's a shared effort because that's what the capacity is able to handle. So these are some of my tips. Ask questions and listen with your ears and your heart. Where's the Spirit already at work? What foundations are already being laid? What relationships are already there? What organizations are already doing the work? Don't reinvent wheels. Be humble, curious, empathetic, and teachable. Please do no harm. Please. There's already enough of that. And sometimes I'll hear grumbling about the volunteer registration process. So I have to submit to the background check. Yes. Because as a parent, I want to know every adult in that building has been through the background check.
Yep.
And it's a pain. And you know what? It's worth it. So please, you know, do that little bit of process. Assess what you have. Plan for longevity. As I said, under-promise and over-deliver. The school and the children are always the priority, not the church. Leave the ego at the door. This is not about us. It is about the kids.
I'll just jump in there too,
Yep.
just on that.
Please.
That's been one of our kind of, with a few different projects, not all necessarily related to schools, but that's been one thing that we've been, and we've had to remind ourselves about this, but that's been one thing we've been really intentional about is like, we don't need to have our name attached to it. We don't need our people to walk in wearing Westminster paraphernalia or anything like that, because that takes, it doesn't just distract the schools and the children and the families from what we're trying to do, because they will look at that and say, oh, their intentions are misguided. But it also is distracting for us, because then we get focused on patting ourselves on the back and making it more about us than it is about.
Right. And it's not about evangelism.
Yeah.
Now, if a kid you form a relationship with the football team at the dinner that you're hosting, that's not required to attend Bible study as part of it.
That you baptized?
But if that kid starts coming to youth group because of a friend and they get to know and like they become active in your church and then ask to be baptized, you know, that's different. That's not what we're talking about. No mass baptisms on the football field, please, for the love of God. Oh. Don't create more work for the school. Our schools are already so insanely overworked. Our staff are doing multiple jobs because we have less staff to do the jobs than we did a few years ago. So please don't make extra work for them. And if you're reaching out and somebody's not returning your call, it's probably that they have 200 emails sitting ahead of yours that they're trying to get through. Don't be offended. Continue to reach out. Continue to build a relationship. Don't feel like, well, they never called me back, so I'm not going to do anything. I mean, that might happen, but a lot of times they're just, it takes forever for them to get through email. Yes?
Our school district has a director of Our school district has
a director of community engagement that works for the district. So she's been a really great person to make connections with because she knows what the schools need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If your district has that person, that's awesome. Or your school has like a social worker, or the counselor might be the person you reach out to instead of the principal. Finding that right person, asking around, can be really helpful. Mm-hmm. Also, some places have communities and schools programs, which is a program that helps build partnerships, those types of things. If you have that, that's a great way to kind of start to get to know people. Don't play favorites with the kids. I know that's a really hard one, but kind of like camp counseling when they tell you don't play favorites with the kids, same thing. And partnership is because our faith calls us to love our neighbors. There again, never is a way to share faith. So what other tips? Do you all have other tips that you would also include?
I'd just say that teachers and principals are our allies in this.
Teachers and principals are our allies. Absolutely. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. They are dealing with everything that's coming down on top of them from that whole list of people.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. We are in a team together to help the kids. Last thing I want to leave you with is that our words matter. And this is also advocacy and justice. While the school may have many struggles, good things are happening too. Never forget to celebrate the good and talk about the school in a positive light in the community. Be an encouragement to the students and the staff. This is in the Mission-Minded Guide to School Partnerships, which I think is over here on the table. Pastor Jake McLaughlin said he was talking to a principal one day. Jake, when you talk about the school with your congregation, this is the principal, you tend to focus on all the challenges that our students in the schools face. And no doubt we have our challenges. But we are a school full of bright minds, diversity, and amazing staff. We have lots of challenges, but we also are a great place for growth and learning. Let's try to focus on giving a more balanced view of the school. And that is more important now than ever as we counter the message of failing schools. Because if we're in there and seeing it, we have another voice saying there's actually good things happening. Data shows us that that we feel really strongly about good things happening in our school that we have kids in or that we're connected to in our neighborhood. But we don't know about that other school down the street, the one that we don't have connection to. We're not sure if things are good there. Things are really good at our school, but we don't know. So we need others telling those good stories of the good that's happening. And that is a really awesome opportunity to speak at county commissioner meetings, at school board meetings, at press conferences, anywhere that you can, op-eds, letters to the editor, just to say, hey, I was volunteering the other day and there were really good things happening at, first school of whatever. I mean, that's important. These stories are what changes our hearts and minds. So tell the stories. Don't shy away from naming the realities. There's power in truth-telling, but let's not blame the teachers and the staff. Let's put the blame where it belongs, which generally is the legislature. It's my favorite game in North Carolina to play, how can I blame the legislature today? I can always find a way to blame them somehow because it is so easy. It is so easy. When you're 50th in the country in funding, it's really not hard. We also don't have a 2025 budget yet. We're the only state in the nation without a 2025 budget.
2025?
Not until at least April. Yeah, they haven't passed last year's yet. Yeah. And the same party's in charge of both houses. The House and the Senate are both held by the same party, and they can't even agree. Don't get me started. What are your thoughts, last thoughts, comments, questions? Come up to the mic if you would.
And I think there was a question online that we said we would circle back to.
Yes, thank you for the reminder. Earl?
Quick question. First of all, thank you for all the information that you have brought. I think you've done a great job. But I know for the school, or for the church that I'm in, our congregation, our leadership has the idea that because we're across the street from the schools, that we should just go over there and pitch a tent and start handing out pizza and telling them Jesus loves them and get them into to the church.
The church thinks you should do this.
Yeah, there are several members of
Okay,
our
gotcha.
And so, what's the narrative, that we give to our congregation and maybe several leaders, that kind of say, hey, we're right across the street from a school. We should have kids come into Sunday school every Sunday, and part of all the things that we're doing, because of those barriers that are, this line of church and state that we kind of talked about today. What are some things that you feel that you could share, particularly for my situation, but for those who are also like, hey, it's not that easy to just go across the street or go down the street or go into a neighborhood and start getting kids to come to your church?
I think it's a great question. A couple things come to mind immediately. School-church partnerships are not a way to save your Sunday school program or your youth group. That's not what that's not what this is for. So being very clear about that with whomever you're talking about. I think one of the things that we often think about with talking about separation of church and state as well is really important. People don't often understand what that really means, that it's to protect the church as much as it's to protect the schools and the government. And the Christian nationalism mix makes that really hard these days. But I was talking with someone recently after a worship service, and they said they were all excited about like prayer in schools and all this stuff. And I looked at her and I said, think about it with me for a minute. If the prayer was being led by someone in another faith tradition, and your child was being forced to do this, to participate, how would you feel about that? And she went, oh. And I was like, that's why we don't want to push our faith on anybody, because that's not creating a safe space for that child to attend school if that's not their faith tradition. And I don't know if it really truly registered, but like it was just that brief planting of a seed of like flip the script and see what that would be. If you're the parent and this church is coming in and like, doing all the stuff that you're talking about, how would that parent feel if it was a different tradition? Would you be okay with that? I mean, I wouldn't be okay with that even if it was another Christian church most of the time. I would have a huge problem with that as a parent, as a pastor, even if it was a different church, much less if it was somebody else. Like, that's just not appropriate. So having those conversations and not being afraid to talk about politics and civics. Find the high school history teacher or civics teacher in your congregation and invite them to teach a Civics 101 class. We need it. The country needs more civics education. Yes. And we need to come back to that other one, I know, so.
The first question, she said that she had gotten from your conversation. She said thanks.
Okay.
And then Annie says, any ideas to help foster a healthy relationship between the church and the preschool that we house? It feels very cliquey. If you are involved with one, it is shocking to find you involved with the other. The same goes for the families. This isn't at all related to legislature, but I would appreciate any ideas.
To like form relationships with the preschool?
I think so. Relationship between the church and the preschool.
I'm gathering from the conversation, it's not a church-sponsored preschool, it's just being housed in their building, perhaps? Because I know that's the case a lot of times. The building is like rented by another,
Her first comment was, our church has a preschool and an unofficial partnership with the Indian Hill School District. We practically share a parking lot with the elementary school. We are looking to expand beyond Indian Hill and move to other schools, as well as to further our relationship with the preschool. Even though they are in the same building, we find that there is often a disconnect. So just.
I mean, I think there's lots of ways you could try to build relationships with those in your building. In that situation where it may not be an issue of separation of church and state, you have a little bit more flexibility to invite them to the trunk or treat, or, something, having coffee for the parents after drop off at some point, just kind of getting the staff to drop in and do, reader of the day, like if they do like a special reader to come in and read a book or something. There's some ways that you could just start to build familiarity, but relationship, focusing on those relationships, I think is huge. That's my answer to just about everything, if you haven't noticed. Yes.
We had a similar situation. Oh, sorry. We have a similar situation, and slowly over the years, it started with the preschool demanded, which are also our Sunday school classes, remember, that's the classes they're using, that we remove all religious symbols from the basement, from their area. And slowly but surely, we've in conversation got them to agree that that's not acceptable. I mean, we need them there for the kids on Sunday and stuff, so there was a Noah's Ark picture. Anyway, what happened was over the course, and it's a good tip, is we got a couple of people on their board. And so there's a couple of church representatives on the preschool board.
Yeah. Any other questions online or in the room?
Sorry. I put one up on the building and infrastructure, and it might be better. It might be better if I talk to you personally about it, but we had a situation where there was a power outage at the high school during some big SATs or something like that. And with no notice, we had them all come down and do it in our fellowship hall. 6 months later, our church went on fire, and the school refused to have us use their auditorium, even although we had already started that. And that must be, is there any way that you can get around that, or you can work on that not being the case?
Yeah, I mean, every school district has their own policies about what's acceptable and how buildings are shared, and insurance can be a huge piece of all of that. So I don't really know in that particular situation, but it is worth exploring, ways that, who do you need to talk to find out what the stumbling block is? Is that a district decision? Is it a superintendent decision? Is it a principal decision? I mean, just asking questions and figuring out who has the power to possibly change the situation, or why, like being really honest about why they said no. They may not want to tell necessarily, but like naming those elephants in the room of why maybe they said no. I don't know. Well, I want us to close and invite you to stand. We're going to try to sing a cappella. This is Joyful, Joyful, We Adore Thee. So I think it's a tune we should all know. But this is a text by Carolyn Winfrey Gillette. You may have all heard it, I don't know. But I love this hymn, and so I thought it would be a great way to close. And then I have just a couple of ads at the end to share other information. But I invite us, does anybody sing that could pitch us?
I have a pitch pipe.
Oh.
There she goes.
Ask and she shall receive a pitch pipe to help us sing.
Keyboard in there too.
Guitar, anyone? I mean.
Great. That's good.
Pitch it nice and low.
Real people.
Baritone.
In G.
Somebody said it's in G. Perfect. I'm not the music major. God, you give each generation words of wisdom, truth to tell, and your call to every nation is to teach our children well. For each child is in your image, moving toward maturity. Through your word we hear your message. Teach your children, guide and lead. Christ, you taught us love of neighbor when you welcomed people in. And you told us children matter, to neglect them is a sin. May the children who are learning to be all that they can be, find in public schools the caring of the whole community. Spirit, give to us a vision of a world that's just and fair. May our courage, strength, and wisdom reach to children everywhere. God, may public education touch the lives of rich and poor. May we build a strong foundation, then watch all your children soar. And all God's people said, Amen. You can have a seat real quick. Last couple of things. Here's my contact information. Again, please reach out, even if you're not in North Carolina, which none of you are. I would love to help any ways that I can. It's also on the little thing here, the little QR code. Here is a list of the resources. These are the 5 books that I submitted to APCE to say, like, these are the books I would most recommend. But clearly I had a lot more than 5, so I brought a lot. But those are the ones up here. If you really are interested in the Christian nationalism, I mentioned the Amanda Tyler book, and you can find her online talking about it in different places. The education wars that's up here, if you're unfamiliar with some of what's happening in education at a federal policy level, it's a great journalist and education professor that's talking about it. All Our Children is an Episcopal book from Episcopal churches that gives a good theology of like why we support public schools. So those are just a couple. I'll also plug one of my very favorites, especially if you're interested in the intersections of race and public education, which you really can't talk about education without talking about race. Cutting School by Dr. Nola Brooks is a phenomenal read. It is also a really hard read because it's all the ways we have intentionally harmed Black children over and over and over again in this country. But it's a really important history to study. Because we need to know our history so we can do better. But there's lots and lots more. I'll send out the list as well, but I thought I'd put them in here. If you're really interested in education and you would be interested in joining us, in September in Houston, right outside Houston, is the Network for Public Education National Conference. It's every year, 18 months, we have a national conference. They're great. It's with education advocates from all over the country, and there's a group of us who do faith-based work who go, and we'll be presenting hopefully a workshop and stuff like that. So please join us if you're interested. I also do advocacy workshops and would be glad to work with your congregation either in person if you're closest to me or on Zoom, and can cater that to whatever would be helpful for your community. Even if it's not education, we can talk about other topics too, because the skills are transferable. And then if you're opposed to vouchers, which I hope you are, it's a whole other workshop, but we have Vouchers Are Against My Religion shirts that we are selling as a fundraiser. So I have one over in my bucket that I can show you. We wore those, the picture here with my board president and I from last March in DC. We went to an education committee hearing on the Hill and sat right behind a particular former education department secretary that is really pro-voucher. We sat behind her spokesperson with our stoles and collar and Vouchers Are Against My Religion. So every time C-SPAN put us up on the screen with him talking, our Vouchers Are Against My Religion shirts were directly behind him. It was really, really fun. Really, really good trouble. So that's the last of my slides, but thank you all so much for being here, and I really appreciate your time. So, and I'll hang around a few minutes and be cleaning up, so please, if you've got other questions.